For today's webinar, before we begin, I'd like to go over some small housekeeping items. This is a webinar format, which means attendees are in listen and view only mode with no ability to unmute or start your cameras. You'll be able to ask questions during the Q&A portion of the call by selecting the Q&A icon on your Zoom toolbar. Also, please feel free to use the chat feature to send any comments or feedback. You're also able to access closed captioning and select any of the 11 available languages that you'd like to listen to view today's session in. And with that, I'd like to start the session by turning it over to Andrew.
Good morning, everybody. I just get a quick check from everybody before we start on my sound quality. Maybe get a thumbs up in the chats and make sure everybody can hear me okay. Yay, lots of thumbs. That means everybody's paying attention. Maybe I'll do that halfway through to make sure you're still awake. So welcome. Happy to have you all here. Today we're doing a little bit more of a deep dive into business lighting. If you've been to one of our webinars before, you know that we have multiple sub-programs part of business lighting, not just the retrofit program, but one of them is tenant and new construction training, and that's what today is about. So welcome, and I will go over briefly some other items, part of the program and things that we do. So first I'll introduce the team, and PSE always likes to give a safety moment. Whenever we have 5 or more participants, it's an important part of our culture at PSE. We'll talk a little bit about the 2024 incentives, and that's for all of our program for retrofit, and go through LLC, NLC, and AELC, what those would mean, just a brief overview. We are going to skip named communities and BLI partners to save some time. If you have questions about those, you can contact me directly, and then we'll have Diane pick up the presentation and start working on talking about specifically TI and new construction, and she'll also bring up the application for you, and then we'll wrap it up. And we should be able to wrap us up by 10:30 for that. So let's meet the team. I'm Andrew. You may see a name missing from our list that you've seen up here for the last 10 years or so, and that's Michael Lane. We miss him, but we're charging forward, and we're excited to be giving you this presentation today. We also have Carla on the phone, and Danielle, and Diane obviously will be giving us a little insight into TI new construction a little bit. We also have with us Michelle, Paula, and Eva. Those are our business support analysts, where they take care of the contract admin. So when you get a grant and it comes from business lighting at psc.com, they're the ones monitoring that mailbox for us. And you may hear from one of those for an occasion if there's something missing from the application before it goes into our internal systems. And also, like I said, the grants as well. So just an introduction of who you may hear from time to time. Quick safety moment. Think about your tire safety. We have been going through the spring and there's been some rain. So if you don't have good tires, it could affect your brakes. Make sure they're wearing properly. And I think the best tip out of all these that spell out tire safety is a little plug for Les Schwab. I've been going to them for years, and they always do a free tire check. There may be some other shops around that do the same thing, but Les Schwab is a great spot to get a free tire fill and a free check if you have any concerns, if you have good tires or not, and you don't carry a penny around anymore, because who has seen a penny the last time? I don't know. Probably find one somewhere. So here are what the business lighting program includes. We're called Business Lighting Incentives. So our main program, what we call the parent program, is retrofits, and what you've probably been familiar with for a number of years. But then we also have tenant improvements and new construction, and what we're going to deep dive into today. We also have Business Lighting Express, and we'll do a deep dive into the Business Lighting Express program in September. I'll give you a date later on at the end of the presentation when we'll do that deep dive. And we also offer street lighting incentives. So the Business Lighting Parent Program that is part of retrofits is for interior and exterior installations, upgrading your traditional lighting and just doing any kind of savings from your traditional lighting sources up to LED. If you're saving energy, we likely have a incentive for you. Our application is posted on psc.com/businesslighting. You can find out about all the programs there and all the incentives. So I would say one of the most important websites you want to keep in your back pocket when you're dealing with business lighting is psc.com/businesslighting. An email address that we have 3 people, like I mentioned earlier, that's monitoring that mailbox is businesslighting@psc.com. No matter how small or how silly you think the question is, we'd much rather have you ask than to maybe just send in an application and think you have it right. Give us a shout, give us a call. We'll call you back if you put your phone number in there to chat about it. So businesslighting@psc.com. And you can always reach out to me as well and help answer your questions or get to the right people. On occasions, we do get asked about other programs within PSE. Recently, we've been asked a lot about electric vehicles or about variable frequency drives, window replacements, all sorts of things that PSE offers for incentives. So I'm happy to get your email on that, and I can forward it to the proper people to figure out what other incentives that you're looking for, rebates that we offer that you're saving energy with. Tenant improvement. This is one of the areas that we'll talk into that deep dive in just a few minutes. It is for projects that are doing their improvement. The difference would be between retrofit and tenant improvement is going to be that we can't find the baseline for the products that were already installed. So for instance, on retrofit, we walk into the space and we can verify that you have 3-lamp PA fluorescents, say, in an office space. We can look at it, we can count them, and it can be marked in the workbook. And but when you go to the tenant improvement side, the reason you'd fill this application out instead is that maybe construction has already began. Maybe it already happened. Maybe it went back 6 months ago. You walked into a space and say it's a 10-story building and you're working on floors 7, 8, and 9, but you found out they already started work on floor 10 and we can't verify what products were installed there. If they were 2x2, 2x4s, what the lamping is. You would then want to use a TI program because then it looks at Washington State Energy Code and for a baseline rather than what's physically in the space. That would be the biggest difference there. We can still do interior and exterior for that. So you would apply using our application that you use for retrofit, and it's at psc.com/businesslighting. There, I'll show you a button in a little bit later of where to find that application. It's always the latest application that's online. I think we're on version 2 right now for 2024. Same email address. Questions regarding TI would go to Diane. The same would go for new construction. When you're doing new construction projects and you're only working on lighting, you can use our application that we use for retrofit and TI. There's a drop down for that. And again, it uses the baseline of Washington State Energy Code. It'd be the 2018 Washington State Energy Code rather than the 2015 as TI would use. So that's the difference that would be there. But same contact, same email address, talk to Diane with questions. If you have other new construction projects that are not just specifically to lighting, but it's a whole energy building analysis that you want to apply for, it would go through our new construction program. And that new construction program website address is psc.com/new construction. We also offer Express under business lighting. Express is really folks who are doing regular maintenance work, and paperwork tends to be a little simpler. A lot of times you would submit these maybe on a quarterly basis on some small scale projects. Questions about that would be businesslighting@pse.com, or you can contact Carla directly, Carla Peterson at pse.com. We'll do that deep dive on Business Lighting Express coming in September. We also offer incentives for street lighting incentives. This is probably a little bit rarer of projects that we do to certain customers, because we're typically working with pole services, part of PSE pole services, or we're working directly with some of the jurisdictions in the area, like City of Bellevue and Federal Way and Renton and folks like that. We work directly with. But not to say that you may come across a project like an HOA may have some streetlights. Reach out to us, see if there's an incentive available for that HOA. You could email directly to streetlightingincentives@pse.com, and that mailbox is monitored by Danielle, or you can reach out to her directly to ask questions to see if it would qualify under street lighting. And just a little insight, if it doesn't qualify under street lighting, it likely could qualify under our retrofit program, because maybe it's not a right of way. Maybe it's it appears to be a street, but it's not a public right of way, and it could qualify under retrofit instead. But reach out to us rather than just letting that project go by, because we're happy to help pay for those savings. Let me just take a quick pause there and see if there's any questions. I see some chat things have come up. Is there anything in there, Diane, to be addressed?
No, just things Elena has been putting in.
Okay. Here are some of the terms, not all the terms, for participating in our business lighting incentive programs. The incentives that we pay are paid up to 70% of the project cost, and that is for business lighting incentive. Business lighting incentives, which is retrofit, BLI, or BLSLI, which is street lighting incentives. If you go through TI, new construction, or express, we can pay upwards of 100% of the project costs. It may not be as high of an incentive if you're using business lighting incentives, the retrofit, but it's at least worth trying and getting some sort of savings and getting some sort of incentive than receiving nothing. And that's why we bump it up to 100% to try to really help folks out. Project always has to be cost effective. We've been talking about that for years. It's the TRC, total resource cost. That's why it's in the Excel spreadsheet, so we can run those numbers and run the calculations in the background for that. There are pre and post inspections that are required for projects that have over 25,000 kWh in savings. Where you would see that is on the installations tab of our application. So once you start filling it out, it will show you what the expected savings are, and you'll be able to tell, oh, it's about 25,000, so you would expect that someone's going to be coming out to visit you and do that site inspection. If it is a project, when you receive the grant, if it's a project that shows on that grant that it is under 100,000 kWh, within that grant language, it will show that you have 12 months or 1 year to complete that project. And if it's over 100,000 kWh in savings, then you would have up to 2 years. Now, we can work with you if you are bumping up against that time frame. We're happy to do it. Just let us know in advance. A lot of times the people on the business lighting team will reach out to you maybe at month 10 and month 11 saying, hey, you're coming up across that date for the grant to expire. Are you still working on the project? You need some extra time. But try to reach out to us in advance and let us know if you're bumping up against that, and we can do our best to work with you so you can not have an expired grant. Okay, let's look at 2024 incentives. Not a lot has changed when you're doing screw-in replacements. We're still offering those, the HID to LED. Those tend to be things more for exterior. Sometimes you'll find interior. It could be maybe a hotel that has downlights that are sitting in a ballroom. That could apply to just doing a screw-in replacement. It could be for exterior fixtures, for wall packs, maybe some parking lot fixtures if you're not replacing the whole head. We can still offer incentives for HID and CFL replacements for that, but it's only paid at that low rate of 17 cents, as well as lighting components. So if you're piecemealing items together, if you are buying the sockets and you're for the T-LEDs and you're replacing those, and you're buying a separate driver, those are considered components for us. You're not doing a retrofit kit. A retrofit kit is from the manufacturer where they sell you the whole item. You might only need 5-6 screws and to wire together 3 wires. Then that would be a retrofit kit. But if you're taking parts and pieces and reconfiguring that fixture, then we consider those components. And if you have questions on that, we can help you determine if it is components or retrofit kits. On T-LED replacements, we are still offering incentives for those. So if you are doing a T-LED replacement for a T12 or a T8, we offer $4 per lamp. That does not apply to the new construction program. And something a little bit newer, just in the past year that you may not be familiar with, is that we offer $2 for T-LED to T-LED lamp. So if you have an older style T-LED that might be 10 years old, and you're looking to replace those, and maybe they were at 18 or 20 watts, or maybe even some of them were 24 watts back 10 years ago, and you replace it with an updated LED that's only 12 or 16 watts, as long as there's that 5-watt difference between them, we can offer you $2 per lamp on that. Other incentives that we offer, if you're doing a brand new LED fixture or retrofit kit, we will offer you 30 cents per kWh on the savings. And if you are doing LED fixtures and it has some sort of controls, either on board or wall or ceiling controls, we will offer 50 cents per kWh. So really trying to push that, not just you install some newer technology and have some savings, but we're finding we can collect an awful lot of savings if you're also adding in controls. So that would cover LLLC, which is luminaire level lighting control. That would cover network lighting control, which is NLC. The difference between those are LLLC has the controls on board each and every fixture, and NLC will have the controls for those fixtures outside of the fixture, but within the space controlling those fixtures. You can see that we offer some bonuses for doing those extra controls. So not only are you receiving the 50 cents per kWh, but we offer some great bonuses. We're at $100 for every fixture of LLLC fixtures that sit within a daylight zone. Pretty big. I think we're the only utility within the country. I was hesitating because I know for sure that it's at least within the Northwest, we offer the highest bonus there. But I'm pretty sure that we also are the highest across this country for offering that bonus. Most others are sitting around either $50 or $100 per fixture. Additionally, we do offer for LLLC fixtures, if that fixture is outside of the daylight zone, then it's $50 per fixture. NLC, like I said, is network lighting control fixtures. Then we offer a $50 bonus for those fixtures on top of that 50 cents per kWh. And if you go to the outside, ALC for us is advanced exterior lighting controls. We have some specific rules on those, but it's basically going above and beyond what is being offered for controls, what your standard controls are for photo sensing control. We offer $75 a fixture. I'll go into a little bit of specifics now on some of these. So luminaire level control, it's the $100 bonus. We give a definition there for you. There's also a definition on our application under the terms page. Something that's fairly new this year that we just started is having one grant with one project number for luminaire level control type of products, and when you submit for those projects. We used to have two grants and paid it at two different times. One was called the base, and the second grant was called the performance. Now we are calling your project a controls project, and we do partial payments. So you don't have to track two different project numbers, two different project names when it's one site address. We just have the one project name and the one project number. So that should really help you track your projects a little bit better with us. But we still have the two payments. Questions on
Andrew,
that?
do you see the
Anything pop up?
question? There's a question from Kevin Park here
go
regarding the
ahead.
control. Yeah, regarding the control rate, the 50 cents per kWh. We can only use new fixtures, correct? Retrofit kits are not included in that bracket, is his question.
We offer them for retrofit kits and for new as well, both would qualify. Okay, let's see where we are. Network lighting controls. So those are interior fixtures that don't have the controls on board each and every fixture. So you might have the daylight sensor and the aux sensor sitting outside of the space and be able to still control those, still group those. We're offering those at $50 bonus, and that's again above the 50 cents per kWh. We again would call it a controls project, and it's one grant with one project number and then two payments made. So what those look like is you get the pre-inspection, you get the grant, you work, you're all approved to move forward with the project. Then when the project is finished, you get two post-inspections. One to verify that the new fixtures are installed, and then the second post-inspection happens typically 30 days later after the controls are all programmed and the customer is happy. Then that second half is called the performance, gets paid out. Here are our rules around advanced exterior lighting controls. This is going above and beyond the standard controls that's required for photo cells. And we offer the $75 for each new fixture. If you happen to have an existing LED fixture in the space, say it's a parking lot, maybe it's some retail stores, and the LEDs were done a few years ago, but they don't have the advanced controls in them, we would pay you $50 for each count of LED fixtures that are on the site, on top of that 50 cents. And what you need to do is to have a photocell or astronomical time clock, which is standard, the dimming driver, which is pretty standard now in LED fixtures, setting that dimming driver to a high-end trim of 90% max. So say it's putting out 20,000 lumens, then it has to be set at 90% of that, so it's not at full brightness. And that's where we first collect some savings, so saving 10%. And that 10% difference really isn't seeing much difference in the eye. So walking into a space or walking into a parking lot where it's set at 100% or 90%, the human eye isn't really detecting a big difference there, but we get 10% savings right off the bat as soon as they're installed. The other part we're collecting most of those savings, and why we're paying out these bonuses, is that when it has an occupancy sensor included, that if someone, when that store closes, say it's 11 o'clock, say it's a Target parking lot with a bunch of other stores attached to it in a strip mall, and those store closes at 11, you would expect at 12, 1 o'clock that those lights would then dim down 50%, and that's where we're collecting the savings. So we're not asking to be turned off completely, so the parking lot's not dark, but they dim down 50%. So still enough light there, but as soon as someone enters into that property, then the lights come up at 100%. And when that happens, then usually police that are going by, your security officers, security patrols happening, they notice that there's activity 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they kind of like that. and we're collecting the savings off of that drop down of 50%. Okay. Any questions on any of those slides?
I didn't see any come up.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to move now into tenant improvement and new construction. So Diane?
Okay, so a few of these Andrew already mentioned, but we'll go over these again. So what is the difference between the retrofit and the tenant improvement and new construction program within business lighting? As we said earlier, for new construction and tenant improvement, the project cap is 100% of the project cost. You're typically not going to get there, since new construction and tenant improvement tends to be a little more expensive. The PSE TRC, the total resource cost, does not impact the incentive. So that's something to take into account. Maybe you have a job where they're installing some expensive architectural fixtures, and even if it's a retrofit job, sometimes you'll see that that TRC in using the retrofit application brings the incentive maybe to zero. If it drops too low, we can look at the tenant improvement option and see if that will get you at least some incentive money that way. Projects can be submitted up to 6 months after installation, so you can submit it ahead of time or during construction or 6 months after. So if it was a job that truly was a retrofit job and you forgot to submit an application ahead of time, you can submit it up to 6 months after, and we can use the tenant improvement option. The incentive likely won't be as large as if you did the retrofit option. So we still encourage you, if it's a true retrofit job, to go through the retrofit option, but there is that possibility to still get incentive. For baseline, for TI, we use the 2015 Washington State Energy Code. Over here, we also list the sections of code if you want to refer to those. We'll be sending this presentation out later, so you can look those up if you'd like. And then for new construction, hey, Andrew, I think we can see your teams on here. At least I can. Thanks. And then for new construction, we use the 2018 Washington State Energy Code. And again, there's the sections on there if you want to go look up code to read those later. So we're going to use the watts per square foot and compare that to what you're installing. And that's how we're going to come up with the incentive. Meeting the minimum Washington State Energy Code control requirements does not receive an additional incentive. So we'll go over that a little bit more in a later slide. Next slide.
Sorry, it does not want to advance for me.
Oh no.
We try another button. There we go. There must have been a question. Maybe that's why it didn't advance.
Maybe.
Okay, there we go.
So for the interior baseline, there's two options in code that you can use to when you're applying for your permit and complying with code that you can use. There's the building area method and the space by space method. For PSE, for calculating the incentive purposes, we only use the building area method. So even if you are actually using space by space to comply with code, we're still going to use building area method to calculate the incentive. Here is a snapshot of that table in code that shows you the building area method, the lighting power densities for different building types. There are more than that. So if you go to that section, you can see the full table. This is all built into our workbook. So we calculate this in the workbook. So you don't have to go look it up, but if you want to, it's there. Go with the
Just a little side note on this. If you're not sure where to find the Washington State Energy Code, a quick way to find it is go to Google and type in SBCC Washington or WA, and it will be the first hit. SBCC stands for State Building Code Council. So either SBCC space WA or WA space SBCC, and it'll pop up. And then you can follow the links and looking for energy code, because all the codes are listed there. Another little quick thing is, if you've noticed, there's some little dots and dashes on this screenshot of the table. If you look at the beginning of the Washington State Energy Code, it'll show you what all those dashes and dots mean. I don't remember off the top of my head what those mean. It's probably a change from last code, or it was taken from a previous code or a different code. It could have been taken from ASHRAE, but it would show you what those dashes and dots mean, because I think we have another slide coming up with a table, and it would give a solid line rather than a dash. So if you're wondering what some of those might mean as you're reading through those.
Good point.
Okay. You good for the next one?
Yep, next one. I think we're good. So here is a snapshot, not the whole table, for the exterior lighting power allowances. You'll see here on the left, there's the different exterior space types. And on here, you want to think about what the intent of that fixture is. So what are you trying to light up with that? You know, if it's a wall pack, are you trying to light up a parking area? Are you lighting up a walkway? Are you lighting up the landscaping? That's a space type you're going to want to think about that's where you're using. And over on the right, you'll see the different lighting power allowances by zone. PSE assumes zone 3 for everything in our workbook. So zone 1, that's going to be your national parks where we want to keep light low. Zone 2 is typically more residential. Zone 3 is your typical commercial, where zone 4 is going to be your high density metropolis areas. So, but our workbook just assumes zone 3, since that's where the majority of our work we figure typically is, as we're business lighting. So yeah, I think that's all on that table. So let's talk a little bit more about controls. So for TI and new construction, our baseline KWH in our workbook, we assume that you are meeting the minimum control requirements. So we are not code police, so we're not going to go out and check, oh, are you meeting code? Do you have aux sensors where you need them? But our baseline is assuming that you are using the controls where they are required. Therefore, meeting the minimum control requirements does not receive an additional incentive. So for TI and new construction, if you just install a basic aux sensor on the wall and there's no networking for the fixtures, you're not going to receive the additional 20 cents per kWh for installing those controls. However, if you do LLC, NLC, or AELC, you will receive the additional 20 cents per kWh incentive, plus you will still receive the bonus. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing TI and new construction. And if you are interested in reading up on the minimum control requirements, the sections of code are on this slide that you can go to and read up on that. Next slide. So this slide pertains to new construction only. In code, there is something called energy efficiency credit requirements. So for new construction projects, as some of you might know, you need to meet all the code minimums, and then you have to get some additional credits. So those are things that go above and beyond the minimum code. And each building can pick and choose which credits they want to get and use to meet these requirements. Some of them are with HVAC or the building envelope, and then there's also some lighting options. And for your new construction project, if you're using one of the lighting options to get your credits, then we have to take that into account in our baseline. So I'll show you on the application later where we ask about that. But if you're using option C46.3.1, and that is where your total connected interior lighting power is 90% or less of the allowed lighting power density in code, that would be that option. And then C4 6.3.2, that's going to be when you're to meet those credit requirements, you are doing a total connected interior lighting power of 80% or less of the allowed lighting power densities. So that's something to take into account. For TI, we don't worry about that, but for new construction, we do ask that. Required documentation. So some of this is the same as retrofit, and then there's some additional items as well. So we'll need the completed Excel application. We'll see that this is the same application that you use for retrofit. We just fill it out a little differently. You'll need a signed customer authorization page that can be found in the application. We'll show that. We just need a PDF of that completed. We will need the lighting and control specification sheets. We will need the W-9 for the payee. In March, there was the IRS released a new 2024 W-9. So if someone is not already in our system as a payee, then we have to make sure their W-9 is on the updated 2024 form, not the last one was released in 2018. So just something to be aware of. For TI, we need some sort of drawing, sketch, or plans that shows wherever the project is taking place. If it's interior and exterior, we need a drawing for both of those. If it's just interior project, we would just only need the interior, etc. We're pretty flexible on what that drawing looks like because we know we don't always have reflected ceiling plans if it's a TI project. If you do have those, great. We can just take some sort of drawing or sketch you did up. If it's exterior, we could take a Google Earth image and mark up the locations of the lights on that. We're pretty flexible. So feel free to contact me and we can work together on what would work for that. But we need something that we can use to confirm the square footage, basically. And we want to show that square footage on the drawing. For new construction, for the plans, we want the electrical permit set of the reflected ceiling plans, since if it's a new construction project, those should always be available. So that's what we're going to ask for there. And for new construction, we are also going to ask for the lighting compliance summary portion of the Washington State Energy Code compliance forms. Typically, I do see those in the permit drawing plans. So you should be able to find that there. We like to use that to kind of confirm what the square footage was used. And we also like to use that because we can see if you're using one of those lighting options for your energy efficiency credits for code. Is there a question, Andrew? I saw pop up.
There is one just came in. Thinking of a tenant improvement build out from studs, would this be new construction or at TI retrofits with new LED fixtures?
Yeah, we can treat it as TI. A lot of times I do that if they kind of took everything out and rearranged the walls and put new fixtures in, but I typically treat that as a tenant improvement. So
yeah, wouldn't you say new construction a lot of times is maybe a whole building more times than not?
That's what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah, individual spaces within a building typically would be considered more tenant improvement.
Yeah. So if it's a ground up building, I would use new construction, tenant improvement if you're doing a major remodel. We've also seen it been used if a space type was changing, so the lighting needs changed a lot. Maybe it was just a storage warehouse and it was changing to a manufacturing facility. And so they needed, for that new tenant, they needed to increase their light levels a lot. We can use tenant improvement there too.
Okay.
So now get into the application. So
yeah, let me first say for this slide is when you go to pse.com/business lighting, if you scroll down just a small bit, you will see, not this big, but you will see a get started application button. So that blue button is where you would get the latest application. No matter if you're doing TI new construction or a retrofit, that's where our latest is located. The application help, if you click on that on our website, then it opens up a email box for you to ask a question and send it off to our business lighting team. FAQs are some commonly asked questions, facts and questions that are answered, and then we also have a quick reference guide on the programs as well.
Great.
Okay, so Diane, well, I'm going to stop sharing. If you could share so you can show the application.
Will do. Okay. Can we all see that?
Not yet, quite
No,
yet.
oh. Oops, there we go.
Great. There you go.
Okay, great. So here's the application. Like we said, it is the same application that you use for retrofit projects. So this first tab here, this is the terms tab. There's nothing you need to fill out here, but it has a lot of good information for reference. If you ever want to see, what's required for approval, what the different incentive levels are, that's all going to be on here. You can also find our full definition and requirements for LLC, NLC, and AELC on here. I refer to this a lot when working with newer contractors and customers about what our requirements are. So a lot of good information on here if you feel like reading it over.
Yeah, also our qualifications for spec sheets, if you scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
We do not take or insist on DLC certifications. We don't need them, don't care about them. We have our own requirements for those. However, with that said, if you want to send in the DLC sheet, that's fine, but not needed. Don't need to go through that extra work. Our requirements are listed on the website under that terms page. It's for UL or ETL listing, a power factor of 0.9 or above, manufacturer's warranty of being 5 years or more, and showing the total input watts on there. A lot of times, maybe like RAB is a good example. It'll show input watts, not just watts of the fixture. That's what we'll always take as input watts.
Good point.
I'm going to mute myself because the landscapers decided to show up just now.
Oh, perfect.
So I'll unmute when needed.
So now we're going over to the project tab. So this tab, there's a few things to note. When you download the application, the project type is going to say retrofit. So if you're doing TI or new construction, the first thing you want to do is under this project type, you are going to want to switch it to either tenant improvement or new construction. And when you select one of those, two things will happen, or a couple things will happen. But on this page, it will show you the code allowed lighting power density for the building type that you selected here. And if you selected new construction, this is where it'll also ask you if you used C4 6.3 to meet the additional energy efficiency credits. And if you hover over that and click on it, it will give you a little reminder of what those options are. Over in the project location information, you're going to enter your project name, your business name, your PSC account number, and meter number. If it's a new construction project and it's still in the design phase, it has not, or even if it's still in construction, they might not have their PSC account number yet, and we understand that. So we can use a placeholder account number in there. However, before the project is paid, we do have to have their customer's PSC account number. So we won't be able to pay the incentive out until their PSC account is set up and we have that number. You're going to enter the project owner information here. So this isn't the contractor, this is the customer kind of contact information you're going to put here. You can enter the hours. However, I'll talk about this later. It doesn't really affect the hours used on the building area installations tab, but feel free to fill this out so we can kind of get an idea of what you think the hours will be. Then you're going to put in your installing contractor, who is submitted by, which could be the contractor. If it was a separate submitting company, sometimes we see that. You can select submitting company and put in the company who filled out the application if it's different from who's going to be installing it. Sometimes we even see vendors or some local distributors and rep agencies that submit it. So if that's the case, you could fill out the vendor information here and then select vendor, and that would pop up over there. Sorry. This is that tab. Typically we don't see this, but the LOA, the letter of authorization, typically we see that mostly for large national chains that are working with a consultant or contractor to submit their incentive applications. Then you would fill this out if you have an LOA in place, but I wouldn't say that's that common. Next, we'll go to the fixtures tab. Since we do not care about existing, you don't have to enter any existing fixtures. We just have to enter what you're going to be installing. So if you click on this, create, edit, new fixture, it'll take you over here. And this kind of works as drop downs. So you want to enter all the fixtures you're going to be using in this project. Maybe you have some other ones. You select the fixture type. For new construction in TI, you're going to see a lot of new fixtures for the most part. Your lamps, you need to put in your manufacturer, your part number, and the wattage, the input wattage shown on the cut sheet.
I'll just say, maybe while you get another glass of water,
Yeah, thanks.
is that this is very similar to what you are seeing, or exactly the same what you see in our retrofit program as well. And we realize this is the most cumbersome to deal with of all the application, where you have to build your own library. So look at it that way, that what you're doing is building a library of fixtures for this specific project. In the retrofit program, you have to build your library of fixtures of what's existing in the space. But obviously, like Diane said, on TI and new construction, you're not needing to build that. You would just need to build your library of fixtures under this new fixture lamp creation and all those categories. Because once you build that library, the next tab you can see at the bottom there is called installations. And that's where you make your selections, and it's pulling those selections from this list that you created. So if you do a drop down and it's not there, it's because you didn't put it within your library there. It was just very difficult for us to be able to create millions of library fixtures for you to be able to choose from. So just a little insight on that.
Okay, so next we're going to go over to where we're going to input what we're installing per space. So this is a little different. So there's two tabs we're going to have to use for this. If you're doing both interior and exterior. The installations tab, and this is going to be used only for exterior, for TI and new construction. So that is different than the retrofit application. And for interior, we use this building area installations tab. So let's go back to the installations tab here. When you select TI and new construction, up here it says TI new construction exterior space information. Kind of as a reminder that this is only for exterior. And we're going to go line by line, and you're going to enter information about each fixture and the space that it is lighting up for exterior. I'm going to fill out a new line.
You can make that just a little bit bigger, then scroll
Sure.
over, because it would be difficult, I think, if you go to 90 or 100%. People can see those categories of what that says. It says location.
Yeah. Can you see that better?
That fillable field. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're gonna, name your location. That could be entryway. For heat type, you're going to select exterior. One of the nice things is if you forget that this is only used for exterior, if you do select, say, gas heat, it'll give you an error warning that building area installations is used for interior spaces. So you select exterior, that goes away. And here you're gonna select your space type. This is important to get correct. Like I mentioned earlier, you wanna think about the intent of what this fixture is illuminating. If you have a wall pack, I've often seen that that people select building facade since the wall pack is attached to the building facade. However, I would say most of the time that wall pack's purpose is not to light up the side of the building. Maybe its purpose is to light up the parking area, or maybe its purpose is to light up a walkway, or maybe its purpose is to light up an entry canopy. So you would select what is, you think about what is the purpose of that fixture and you want to select that. Here you're going to enter hours for PSE. We use 4200 for exterior. If you put 4380 or something that is not correct in PSE's exterior hours, it will give you red. And once you fill this all out, you would see an error over here. Below that, you're going to enter the square footage of what these fixtures are illuminating. So, you can use Google Earth. You can, if it's TI, if you have drawings, new construction, you can use that and use the scale and measure things out. And so you'll want to enter your square footage there. Over here, you'll put the number of fixtures. And over here, you're gonna, all those fixtures that you entered on the fixtures tab, you can select here. So pick your canopy fixture. You do not need to enter the cost of the project at all, actually, in new construction in TI. That's something to know. So for this application process, we do not ask for the cost of the project. At the time of closeout, we will ask for the invoice so we can ensure that we are not paying you more than what the project cost, since we can't go over that. And over here, you're gonna enter your control type. And that's how you would complete a line. If you have something, so this gave me a little warning to check my wattage reduction. So up here, this is what code would allow for this 300 square foot place, square footage with one fixture. It will allow 120 watts per fixture, but we only have 20 watt fixture. So it's like, it's just a warning, like, hey, is that really what you're doing? Let's check that and make sure that's correct. Make sure the square footage is correct. Make sure that fixture is correct. Make sure the quantity. So maybe the square footage is only 100, and then that warning goes away. There's a couple of things to know as you fill this out. The kind of common mistakes I see being made, just because it's new for people. Say you have, let's look at lines 2 and 3 here. You have a parking lot and there's 2 different fixture types that are lighting up that parking lot. And we have 10 of these 150 watt fixtures and 4 of these 100 watt fixtures. And that parking lot altogether is 40,000 square feet. So you can't enter 40,000 square feet in both lines, because if you did, then you'd be inflating your incentive. The application would think that you actually have 80,000 square feet of parking lot space, not 40,000. So you'll need to split that up. So your total square footage, when you add those together, is correct. As a little check up here, you can look for the total exterior square feet, and that will add up all of the square footage in the different lines. So you can, that's a good sanity check to make sure that looks right. There are a couple space type categories that if you choose them, code uses watts per linear foot and not watts per square foot. So right here, this walkways and ramps less than 10 feet wide, you'll see if I pick something different, a greater, it would say area square feet, that's what you would enter. However, if you do walkways and ramps less than 10 feet wide, it will say linear feet. So that's when you're going to take the linear footage of that walkway where those fixtures are illuminating, and you're going to enter how many feet, how long is that walkway, and you're going to enter that here.
Diane,
Yep.
it might be good to mention, or at least discuss, and it can be reminded when they fill out an application. In situations where there's a wall pack that's lighting part of a parking lot and a walkway, but then there's also parking lot fixtures that's also kind of covering that, you wouldn't double count that square footage.
Correct.
Because it could really mess up your square footage.
Yeah. Another thing to keep in mind that I've seen is you can only count square footage on that building's property. So maybe you're really close to a public street and maybe there's some light shining onto that public street. You can't count the square footage of that public street or public sidewalk. Or maybe there's some light shining onto the neighbor's property. And hopefully it's designed so it's not doing that much, but you can't include square footage that is off of that property. And also, you know, if there's a dark corner of the parking lot where there's no fixtures and that's not being illuminated, we're not going to be able to count that as well. So any questions on filling out this tab for exterior? As a note up top here, where it says the total savings and your total incentive, this is actually the interior plus exterior. So this summary up here takes what you put into the building installations tab and adds it to what's on this tab to give you your total estimated incentive here. Now we can go over to the building area installations tab. And on this tab, this might be new for a lot of you, unless you've done a TI or new construction project. This is where we enter the interior information. So we're going to fill out basically the yellow boxes. To note, so there's two building type spaces on here. So we have our base building type. And this building type here, you can't select that. This building type selected here, so warehouse, that is pulling from whatever you entered as the building type on the project tab. And same for if the Washington State Energy Code C4 6.3 was used to meet the additional energy efficiency credit requirements, that is also pulling from the project tab, what you entered here. So the next thing you want to fill out is the building square footage of that interior building. And again, we'll check that using the drawings or plans you send over to confirm that square footage is correct. Heat type, you want to select the heat type here. This, in our example here, we're saying this is a non-heated warehouse for this base building type. And then down here, you'll find where you're going to select your fixtures. So what you're going to do for each fixture type in this building, you're going to use a drop down and select the which fixture you're using. So here we have some high bays. In this next column, we're going to enter the quantity of fixtures that are in this building. And then over to the right, you'll see columns for LLC, inside daylight, LLC, outside daylight zones, and NLC. So if any of these fixtures are using those control types, then you would enter the quantity of fixtures from that use that control type for that fixture. So in this example, we're saying 100 of these high bays are in a part of the warehouse with skylights. So 100 of them are getting that LLC inside daylight bonus. And then LLC outside daylight, we were saying 80 of those are maybe an area where there's no skylights. And then you'll kind of go down here and keep selecting all the fixtures and enter the quantities for that are in that building type. If it's TI, and maybe if it was a case where really it was a retrofit project, but you forgot to submit it ahead of time, so we're treating it as a TI. For TLEDs, you could still count TLEDs and get the $4 per lamp incentive there, but we have to take that square footage kind of out of the calculation. So if you select something that's a TLED, this, we'll see if it's not a TLED, this will go away. But if we select something that's a TLED, over to the left, you'll see enter square footage of spaces with TLED. So we're saying there's 10 strip pictures where we have TLEDs in them, and then we need to put that square footage in, and it's in a 500 square foot space. So you're gonna put that over here. So then the workbook is going to use all this information, and it's going to calculate what your designed wattage is for that space. It's going to then calculate the designed kWh for that space. The hours that are used in this are based on ASHRAE 90.1, what typical hours are for that building type. Since we're not breaking it out room by room, this kind of gives us an average for the whole building type of what's typical. There are options on here, like for the warehouse one, if you have a 2-shift warehouse or a 3-shift warehouse, so we do have that flexibility in there. If you have hours that we think are wildly different than the ASHRAE hours for the building type, talk to us, and we can look at possibly, adjusting things if it really makes sense. But it would have to be pretty drastically different. But that is something that you wouldn't be able to change on your own. And if you have a building type that maybe has 2 very different space types, so we have this non-heated warehouse, and maybe we have a gas heated decent sized office attached to it, then we can break out a project into 2 building types. Like I've also seen ones where, maybe it's a hotel and it has a parking garage. Those are 2 very different space types. So we can break those out into the base building type and our alternate building type 1. So down here, you would go and you would select what your alternate building type is, the square footage of just that part of the building, and then the heat type. And we would do the same thing of selecting the fixture in that building, selecting the quantity, typing in the quantity, and then if it does have any LLC or NLC controls, we'd enter it here. If you're using other controls that are not LLC or NLC, we do not account for those in the workbook. So you don't enter those. They do get accounted in our baseline, but you don't need to enter that information because there is no extra incentive for that. Any questions on that tab? So that's
no, but let me say that no questions have come up, which is surprising because I have a ton of questions.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe part of it is it's a lot to take in, and we understand that, and it's really overwhelming. But you can reach out to Diane anytime. You can reach out to me. We can help you through this process. I guess the biggest overall message is if you have TI and new construction, keep in mind that we can help reduce those costs and might help you sell that project. We want to collect those savings. It's important for us to help you to get that incentive because it helps us to record those savings and meet our targets that we have to meet with the state year after year for meeting savings. That's why we offer this. And we do realize it's cumbersome, but once you get into a couple of them, if you're regularly doing TI and new construction, I think it becomes a little easier and easier for you. But we're more than happy to hold your hand along the way, whatever it may take to help you out. So yes, we do understand that process could be challenging, but we're here for you and to help out. And Diane has become a real expert at it. So
Yeah, feel free to, I'm always happy to look at things before, you present a potential incentive to a customer. If you just need help filling it out, you're confused, reach out. I help people with this all the time, so.
Yeah,
always
and
happy to.
remember, it's 100%. It's upwards of 100% as opposed to our retrofit, which would stop you at 70%. So there could be some good money there for you or for your customer.
Yeah, I think that's the bulk of what I have on
Okay.
the application.
Okay. Great. Let me look to switch back. We are. There we go. So just to kind of wrap up for today, we do offer a quarterly newsletter. I know that was put into the chat as well. The quarterly newsletter is fairly new for us. It's about energy efficiency programs and electric vehicles, all kinds of good stuff. You can sign up there, and it was also put into the chat by Alana. Thank you for doing that. Today's deep dive was all about TI and new construction, but if you have questions about our retrofit program or about street lighting, please reach out. Best way to reach out is to the individuals that you saw listed on the presentation earlier. That presentation will be sent out by Friday afternoon. It is a holiday on Monday, and you can also reach us through pse.com/business lighting. All the information is there, or an email address if you can't remember any other email addresses, businesslighting@pse.com. And the next presentation that we'll talk about in a deep dive is Business Lighting Express, and that'll be on September 18th. Here are a few of the email addresses and website addresses for you. So thank you all so much for attending. There is one more thing in the chat, I think. Was that just from Alana? Yeah, there'll be a survey coming out. So thank you again, all. It was great to have you here, and hope that if you work in any Express programs, that we'll see you coming up in September. Reach out in the meantime. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.